Welcome to the Lean Blog Podcast. Visit our website at www.leanblog.org. Now, here's your host, Mark Graben.
Hi, this is Mark Graben. So, stop me if you've heard this joke before. An engineer, an architect, and a nurse walk into a hospital. Okay, well, no, never mind. That's not the setup for a punchline. It's not really a joke. But it is today's episode 355 of the podcast. It is January 15th, 2020. And today's a little different. I'm sharing three conversations of about 15 to 20 minutes each with three people I know who have very different backgrounds and their careers have taken interesting twists, but they've all ended up working in healthcare improvement. Lean is basically, well, that's the podcast here. That's our common thread. But we first have a Toyota-trained engineer, Isaac Mitchell. He started his career. He really wanted to go work for Toyota. He worked for them in Kentucky right out of college. But then, like me, he ended up transitioning from manufacturing into healthcare. And so we'll hear from him. Secondly, we're going to be joined by an architect, Laura Silvoy. Well, that was her undergraduate degree. Then she changed directions and got a master's degree in health systems engineering. And she works for an architecture firm involved in the improvement and design of healthcare facilities. And then thirdly, we have Darren Judkins. He was his undergraduate major. He was a business student, as he'll tell us. He then went and got a nursing degree. And after years of providing patient care at the bedside, he then got involved with lean and healthcare improvement and innovation at his health system, his hospital in Colorado. So we, all four of us, we know each other. We've become friends over time through our involvement in an organization I've been a member of a long time. It's called the Society for Health Systems. SHS is part of the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers. And one reason we all know each other is our involvement and participation in the annual conference the SHS calls the Healthcare Systems Process Improvement Conference. It's a mouthful, but it is a great event. It's being held this year, February 26th to 28th in Savannah, Georgia. I really love this event, the learning, the networking, the friends. I am disappointed that my schedule doesn't allow me to be there this year. This will probably be, I think, the third year out of maybe 14 that I'm not attending. So I really do recommend the event. I'm going to talk with Isaac and Laura and Darren about that a little bit in the episode here. So again, it's a different format than usual. I think you'll like it. I hope you'll like it. We're going to be talking about improvement with three pretty interesting people here. So if you want to learn more about them and learn more about the Society for Health Systems and the HSPI conference, you can go to leanblog.org/355. Well, our first guest today for the episode is Isaac Mitchell. Isaac, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. And, our guests today all have different backgrounds and experiences, and we're all connected through the Society for Health Systems. But Isaac, if you could just maybe, first off, introduce yourself and a little bit about your background. We're going to talk through your career arc a little bit too, because I think you've taken an interesting path that's allowed you to see a lot of different things.
Absolutely. So again, my name's Isaac Mitchell. I'm an industrial engineer by training. I currently work in industry for DeRoyal. It's a medical device and supply manufacturer. But I actually started my career working in automotive, working for Toyota manufacturing in North America. I learned about Toyota in my readings in college, the Toyota production system, the machine that changed the world, and really got inundated by their methodology and wanted to go learn from the source. So that was my mission after college at the University of Tennessee to go work for Toyota. And after 3 months of interviewing, they finally let me join their team, and that's where I started my career in northern Kentucky with Toyota. And great opportunity to work in the automotive industry see that culture firsthand, learn the Toyota way problem solving, and just really get a glimpse of that culture. And then I started reading more about applications of lean methodologies in healthcare. Actually read an article in IISE magazine. I believe it was your article, Mark, if I remember correctly, talking about applications of lean and the Toyota production system in healthcare, and that really got me interested in that type of work. And that's when I made my transition into the healthcare process improvement side of things. About 13 years ago, I moved into a role at East Tennessee Children's Hospital as their director of lean, and had some great experiences there. Got to see a wide range of projects, and really got great exposure into the healthcare world. And then a couple of years ago, I moved more into the vendor side of things, working for DeRoyal Industries. They had a product that they were working on, inventory management product that uses RFID. And I made that move into the vendor role, but it's really very much a software-driven company. So I've learned a lot about software development, and using my background in process improvement in this role, making sure that when we go out there, we're really examining how hospitals work before we throw shiny new technology on it. So we're not putting this new technology on broken processes. We're taking this chance to really understand what they're doing. Is this an opportunity to make improvements, and then just add this technology on top of it to make it even better? So that's kind of been my transition over my career, from automotive to frontline healthcare operations, and now more towards the vendor solution side of things at DeRoyal.
Yeah. And for any industrial engineering students who might be listening to this podcast who have been involved in Society for Health Systems as students, I think your career arc, Isaac, shows how I'll stick my chest out and pride as being an industrial engineer as well. But there are transferable skill sets and thought processes that come from our education as industrial engineers that can be applied in all sorts of different settings. So.
And absolutely, I think that's one of the great benefits of the industrial engineering background, is it has so many applications to different industries and fields, and it's really up to the graduate what they want to do with their knowledge, and it is transferable, like you said, to any industry. We are trained problem solvers, and we can go out to many different applications and apply that knowledge. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think your career path and mine both show whatever you start doing right out of school doesn't mean you're locked into that for the entirety of your career.
Absolutely. Did you start at GM or Dell? I couldn't remember which was first.
GM. Yeah, I survived General Motors. But it's funny. Speaking of General Motors, and I don't mean to be too flippant about this, but I'm sure you've been hit with the observation. You're working in healthcare, and somebody points out, well, patients aren't cars, and I'm like, there's no disagreeing with that, right?
I agree.
But can you kind of maybe talk through, as you're constructively partnering up with people in healthcare, and they have that understandable hesitation or skepticism. So I'm not mocking that. It's a reasonable concern for them to have. But how do you kind of try to guide that conversation with somebody to help them understand how your lessons from engineering and Toyota can be helpful in the healthcare setting?
Whenever I hear questions like that, and I've learned this over the years as I've learned to be a more effective coach and leader, is I question where their question is coming from or where their statement's coming from. And it's out of some concern, or they're, unsure of what's happening. And, I don't try to defend that question or come up with a canned response. I'd like to learn more about what's going on in their head and what their concerns or fears or, really just try to better understand what they're going through and how I can help. But, I think at the point you're getting defensive, it's tough to come out of that. It's more of a starting to open up dialogue and question about, okay, what are some of the issues that you're seeing? What is going on? What are we trying? What does good look like for you? Because that question comes at you heated, and they're kind of invoking a response, and I try to avoid that and try to better understand the situation before I go down the path of attempting to even consider answering that question. Or that statement.
Yeah, and we're often dropped into situations where there's history, and you don't know what sort of baggage there is from previous attempts to use lean or methods from any industry, as healthcare has tried to do. So yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about trying to understand where they're coming from, and like I said, there's a basis for a concern, or there's a question behind the question.
Yeah,
we're saying really like, well, hey, patients are not cars. That's not even a question, but there's an implied question.
Yeah.
And as long as they're willing to have a conversation instead of making that statement and stomping off, we can get somewhere, right?
This is what I'm thinking in my head when that question is asked. I think if people had a chance to see modern automotive manufacturing and how complex it is and how well cars are treated, they would have a little better context around the Toyota production system and the thinking behind it and the management style and the problem-solving process, because it's incredible to see firsthand that process. So,
Well, and I think it's really helpful because I go back to even my earliest days consulting in healthcare, going back to 2005. People hear a word like lean, and they unfortunately sometimes picture like Lucy and Ethel in the chocolate factory. I don't know if younger people picture that, but when you have the opportunity even to go visit a parallel healthcare organization, I remember taking people from a hospital lab outside of Chicago. We went and traveled up to a hospital in Minneapolis. And the laboratory technicians and people who were with us were pleasantly surprised to see the quote unquote lean lab, and it's not so binary to put a label on it like that. But they went up and they said like, okay, wow, that seemed really calm. The phones weren't ringing constantly. People weren't racing around, and so trying to help open people's eyes to what a lean environment would be like to work in. Going to a good factory or a good hospital certainly can be beneficial.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I might have mentioned this in the past conversation, but we did similar things with our hospital executives. We have a local Denso manufacturing facility here in Alcoa, Maryville, Tennessee, and they're a Shingo winning facility. So we were able to take hospital leadership out and see their quality circle, their huddles, to kind of see how they operate from a management perspective and the importance of quality in that system. So there is a lot to be learned from this management and style and production system.
Yeah, and like you were describing, it's about problem solving, and even what you talked about in your current role, the idea of not just throwing technology at a problem, but trying to improve the process first. I mean, that's a lesson straight out of the 14 principles of the Toyota way, right? Mm-hmm. What else are you learning? And before we talk about the conference for a minute, you've shifted from working full-time as an employee at one hospital or one health system, and now you've got a role where you're getting to work with a lot of different hospitals. I'm just curious how that's changed your perspective or what you've learned by doing that.
It's certainly been a great learning experience to be exposed to more health systems and seeing different environments, cultures, processes. I think what I learned at each one, it's just like working in different departments at the one system I worked at, East Tennessee Children's Hospital. It's really important to understand their current culture and how people operate and who they are before you start to suggest solutions to problems. or put our technical solution on their process without knowing anything about the people that work in that system or the environment. And the more and more hospitals I go to, the more and more I find it's important to connect to people, listen, understand about what's going on, sit in your Ono circle, observe, learn, and then start to work together to improve processes and apply our technology or whatever solution you might have to best fit their culture and their needs. So the more I see, the more I see similarities, but it's always important for me, I think, to go in and then again just learn, listen, and then work together with the people that are doing the work to design the solution that's going to work for them.
Yeah. And I'm kind of chuckling. You talk about sitting in an Ono circle. I don't think Taiichi Ono would allow people to sit. It was always stand in the circle.
Stand, yes. Thank you for that correction.
Is this a modern accommodation, right? Ergonomics, perhaps, or sitting. I don't know. Some people say sitting is bad. I don't know.
Yeah, they say sitting's the new smoking is the phrase, right?
Well, back in the day, in Ono's time, people could probably smoke in the workplace if there weren't flammable chemicals nearby. But it's a different era. But again, like what you're bringing up here, in terms of going in and trying to understand the current situation first, sounds like classic A3 thinking and something else that you learned at Toyota, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's certainly stuck with me. Very much one of those things that you take away. I try to learn as much as I can from any job, any situation, and the A3 methodology and thinking has stuck with me throughout my career. And then the constant reflection towards the end or the finish of a project. What could we do better next time? So the Hansei is the other thing that's really stuck with me.
Yeah. I mean, those are things it's hard to unlearn, right?
No. Yeah.
So we've got the Society for Health Systems conference coming up, or the Healthcare Systems Process Improvement Conference. I always call it the SHS conference, old habit.
Yes.
February 26th for workshops, the 27th and 28th are the main days in Savannah, Georgia. I mean, we've spent a lot of time together over the past 10, 12 years at the conferences, but I'm going to ask everyone on the podcast today, what is it that you personally enjoy and find most beneficial about going to the conference, so year after year?
Yeah, so I've been a member of SHS since I moved from the automotive sector to the healthcare sector. So I think there's lots of value for different groups of people. For me at the time, it was trying to learn as much as I could about health systems. And this is, I believe, one of the best societies out there that really is focused on healthcare systems process improvement. So you get access to a great network of people. When I first started, I read your book, and then I met you at the conference, and you were very open to help answer or talk through any questions I might have about healthcare. So I think the willingness of the network of SHS to share ideas and learn from each other is one of the biggest benefits for me, and I think for people that attend this conference and hopefully become members. And the other thing for me now, more on the vendor side, is I'm not in the day in and day out of healthcare hospital operations. So I like to see and hear what people are talking about. What's going on in industry? Are there common trends? What are people seeing? What are they trying to solve? And then how can we as industry help, solve those problems? So that's the other thing I find interesting from year to year about what people are focused on. And then I love the academic side too, and seeing what academia is focused on, seeing what the students are working on, and kind of learning from youth as well. They become so new and fresh with technology, be it simulation or other, business analytics tools, things like that. So that keeps you young and keeps you up to date on the latest and greatest as well.
Yeah, and there's a diversity of topics. I focus a lot on lean, but there are all sorts of different topics and tracks that really kind of cover the broad range of industrial engineering disciplines and methodologies. That's one other thing that's interesting about the conference. It allows me to I enjoy the lean focused presentations, but I do try to get outside of that lean bubble sometime and go take in a talk about simulation or change management or other safety and ergonomics. That's one other thing I think is a real strength of the event. And I should also thank you, Isaac, for not just being a member, but for being the president of SHS for this past year. Does that term end at the conference?
It does. I will become officially the past president. So I have enjoyed the role and serving for this group. It's been an honor, and I'll continue to be involved with the SHS throughout my career. But great group of people. One of my favorite things about the conference is you talk a lot about professional network, and that's certainly something that you'll get out of this conference. I feel like people are really open and willing to sharing ideas, and there's been multiple times where I've called people up and told them about the situation I've been in, and they've been able to give me feedback and provide mentoring. But the other thing that comes out of this conference is eventually you become close friends with the people that you attend year to year. And the conversation moves more from what's going on at work to more about what's going on in your life and your family. And that's also a great thing that comes out of this conference is good friendship.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for your service. You'll have yet another sticky ribbon to put on the bottom of your badge at the conference. And yes. I think we're chuckling. We're probably both picturing John Templin, who usually has about 20 of those on his badge. Yes,
I was thinking the exact same thing. So yes,
he has to. If he ever starts, there's risk of tripping over it. We're going to have a safety timeout and say, "Okay, John, it's too many."
Yeah.
But one other thing, final thought I'll add about the conference is that you've got a range there, going from college students who are involved in SHS chapters, and you've got folks like John Templin who, I don't know how long he's been involved with SHS for decades, and I'm not trying to push him in the retirement, but I mean you've got a full age range and experience range, and I think that networking and collaboration to be able to find mentors and learn from people with experience, and those of us who are getting gray, have a lot of gray hair, can learn and be inspired by what the younger participants are up to.
I couldn't agree more, and that's one of the things I like about it. A wide range of people there from all different facets of their career, and then you do have a mix of both clinical attendees and more traditional engineering types. So it's a good mix of people. A great melting pot to learn from.
Yeah, that's a great point. We're inclusive of people who are working on health system process improvement. Who aren't engineers. So even though it is based from the Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers, you're right, that's another dimension of diversity at the event. So good point in bringing that up. So Isaac, thank you for taking some time to chat about some of the different things you've done in your career. Let's do a longer chat sometime on the Lean Whiskey podcast. Can I sign you up for that?
I think that sounds like an excellent idea. I'd love that.
Okay, so we'll have a longer conversation. We'll have you as a guest on that. So sorry to plug that podcast, but I think that it'll be fun doing that with you, Isaac.
Absolutely.
So thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, our second guest for today's episode is Laura Silvoy. How are you?
Hi, Mark. I'm doing well. How are you?
Real good. I'm glad you could join us today. And, I think it's an interesting episode because we've talked to Isaac, an engineer. We're going to talk to Darren, a nurse. And sorry, to label you so narrowly here, but I'm going to call you Laura, the architect. But could you introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about your professional background, and then how did you end up working in healthcare?
Absolutely. So my trajectory kind of started out as an architecture student at Lehigh University, and I really wanted to do architecture. I thought that was the career I was interested in pursuing. And then as I got close to finishing my degree, I realized that I would either need to go to a lot more school or work in an area where it wouldn't be sort of like a very not very meaningful work, at least in my opinion, about what I would get to do with a very basic level of architecture degree. So the school I went to, it was a Bachelor's of Art in Architecture, which is the kind of lowest on the ladder of architecture degrees that you can get, which is why there was so much schooling that would have been required afterwards. Mm-hmm. And as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I came upon industrial engineering. And as soon as I found that subject, I said, wow, this is something that I do all of the time, just naturally. I don't even think about doing things like this. It just kind of comes to me. And I decided to pursue industrial engineering just as an overall major. I thought I would have to get another bachelor's degree. I ended up being accepted into a master's program also at Lehigh, and wanted to start on my journey of industrial engineering so that I might be able to take that degree and work in any number of industry that I could, because I was going from this very narrowly focused architecture industry, which I've since learned is not quite as narrow as I initially thought it was, all the way into industrial engineering, which is something that I saw as being applied to sort of any industry. And when I started the industrial engineering program, Lehigh was just beginning the healthcare systems engineering program, which is a specific degree that focuses on industrial engineering in healthcare. And there were professors who were trying to recruit me to that program, and I was kind of like, no, I'm not interested. I just got out of this niche industry of architecture. I would like to keep my options open, and so I'm just going to do general industrial engineering. And if I choose to practice in architecture, or if I choose to practice in healthcare, I can. But if I want to practice in other industries, I could do that as well. I felt like the healthcare degree might focus me into a specific industry for the rest of my life, and I wouldn't be able to get out of it. And as I'm sure you've seen with many of your other guests, having a specific or non-specific degree definitely doesn't lock you into a certain industry for the rest of your career.
Yeah. So then, I knew I was apologizing for a reason for giving such a narrow label. You became Laura, the architect and engineer.
Yes. Yep.
With that
and specifically the healthcare systems engineer, because I did end up joining that program. So I did get my degree in healthcare systems engineering, sort of discovering all of the problems that were happening in healthcare, all of the waste, all of the waiting, all of these things that industrial engineers learn how to identify. I started noticing in the health system, and I said, well, what better way to use my degree than to help people who are dealing with probably an unfortunate circumstance already, which is the reason that they're at the health system. And now on top of it, they're dealing with all of the waste that's involved in our health systems.
Yeah. And, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and there with the master's program is a poster or a summary of some work that you did using discrete event simulation, which I'll have to admit, I haven't touched that methodology in 25 years. Like I took classes, a class in that as an undergrad, and got to use discrete event simulation software, my first year or so out of college. But, I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit in the context, that as Isaac and I had talked about, the SHS, the Healthcare Systems Process Improvement Conference, isn't just about lean. It's about all sorts of IE topics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the first time I was at the SHS conference, I did a poster presentation on a project that I worked on here at my current company, Array Architects. So I was finishing my master's. I worked on my capstone project with Array. And as I was working through that, I had the opportunity to go to the Healthcare Systems Process Improvement Conference in February of that year. And I believe it was the following year then I was able to take my work from my master's capstone project and actually do a poster presentation. And it was this project that I worked on was all about trying to make sure we had the right number of prep and recovery beds for an outpatient spinal surgery center. And so it was an interesting project, and I was able to use discrete event simulation to help our architecture firm understand the number of treatment positions they would need for the number of ORs that were available in that space, which is something that they had always wanted to do and been trying to do. And there's all of these benchmarks that are available to architects through some of the architecture and planning societies, and they provide these benchmarks. But for the first time, we were able to take actual patient data and run it through a simulation model and tell a client, well, the benchmark says this, but actually because you're doing such a specific surgery and you have such tight windows of recovery time, we think that you could build this many recovery bays, which would lead to a cost reduction and a reduction in the square footage of the actual space that you need.
Now, discrete event simulation is, there's challenges in building a model, but did you find? I remember even when I was back at General Motors, there's challenge sometimes in getting people to accept the simulation model, or if they're unfamiliar with simulation modeling. What are your recollections about some of that challenge?
Yeah, I think for this project, it was a little bit easier for them to accept it because we did come down and sit and observe for a long time. So we had a good understanding of what their process was. I think I was down observing for probably about 2 days, which doesn't seem like that long. But when you're sitting and just watching patients go out of prep and into recovery, it seems like a long time to be sitting there and just watching.
Yeah.
And so we did that hands-on observation, and I also created that current state model to mimic their existing system. That way they could see that the model was matching their reality, and then we can make those changes with the number of beds that were available and allow them to see what the impact would be when those numbers changed. So by kind of matching that, this is the model and this is your reality, and they're matching up really well. And that helped this client to believe the model and to say, okay, they're operating hand in hand. The model is showing reality. Reality is matching the model. I think we can make a change and trust that the output is going to be what would happen if we actually did make that change.
Yeah. Because and you've been involved with lean and continuous improvement, and I mean, it seems like there is a time and a place when you're making expensive, somewhat risky decisions, like the number of rooms. That might not be the type of situation where you can just try a number and then iterate. That it is important to try to figure out as best you can the right answer in advance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with design and building. And a lot of times we've come in and clients have asked us to take a look at something. We've designed a simulation model and actually come out with the answer that you don't need any more space. You just need to improve the way you're operating. You don't have to spend money on building something. You can make more process improvement type changes in order to get the outcome that you're hoping for.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So yeah, you probably run into situations where people have sort of jumped to the solution, and that solution means we need more rooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the time. Everybody thinks if they had more space, things would be great. And more space just means more expensive waiting rooms is really what we run into.
Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing situations laboratory and pharmacy settings where they had already built their new space, and the staff had said, basically, we want what we have, but bigger. Mm-hmm. And that led to new types of waste when, sometimes now they were lamenting the increased walking distances mm-hmm. that were a result of having a larger space that hadn't really been redesigned from a process perspective. And is that the type of thing that you've been involved in? You're working for an architecture firm, getting involved in. Can you talk more about some of the aspects of the design process and how workflows and space kind of get improved, or how that planning works all together?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have, in a part of our approach is to start with understanding the process. A lot of architecture firms, or rather the traditional way of approaching an architecture project, is to go in drawings in hand with some kind of plan already half-baked to that first client meeting and saying, okay, we read your request for your proposal, we won the job, and here's what we think we could do for the solution for you. Like, there's not really been too much discussion. You may have attended an interview with the client, and you end up with this plan that the architects have gleaned from past master plans, and they sort of just show up with some sort of floor plan, and it never really changes. It kind of just stays the same. People just ask for more toilets and more storage and things that they think they need, because they don't really know what they need, and the architect doesn't really know what they need. And without asking how they're working, you could never really have a good understanding of what they actually need. So the way that Array approaches projects is by starting without any drawings, starting at the very beginning of going into a department and saying, how do you work today? And is that successful? And we use current state mapping to kind of work through that conversation. And then after understanding how they're currently working, we ask them, how would you like to work in the future? We've identified problems that exist in your current state. We've identified a bunch of places where you think that you could do better. How would you like to make it better? How would you operate in the future if you could do all of these things better? And we help them to focus on pieces of the process that we know they can affect change in. Mm-hmm. We don't sort of do a pie in the sky future state map where it might identify changes in software that we know aren't feasible for that health system at that time. And so I think that is where our conversation begins. And then once you finish that future state, it really leads to a plan then, a set of rooms and the way the building is organized, adjacencies, everything kind of comes together based on that workflow, rather than just saying, well, we have an emergency department and we like to work this way, and we're always out of beds, and so we just need more beds and some more storage, because that will just lead to a bigger version of the same emergency department that you're trying to
right.
build out of.
Yeah. And the attempt to solve some problems, again, might lead to just new, different problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the big things there is, especially when we go into these older hospitals that are much more compact, but are no longer meet the code requirements, then you end up with some of these departments really expanding because they didn't have appropriate support space to begin with. And because they're small and they're old and they didn't need that back when they were built. And now they're moving into new spaces that require so much more support and so much more space, even per room. The rooms are bigger, which is great. Everybody loves the big rooms, but that increases your footprint dramatically.
Yeah. Well, I feel like maybe there's so much we could delve into. Maybe we can do a separate podcast sometime talking about kind of your other good practices and in terms of going about design and redesign and construction.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
So I'm sorry we don't have more time to delve into that, but you had mentioned earlier the poster at the conference. I still, out of old habit, called the SHS conference or the HSPI conference. If people Google SHS conference 2020, Google knows what you mean. It'll point you to the right place. But I was wondering, Laura, if you could share some of your reflections on what you liked about the event. And I see you there all the time, like I am. What are some of the things you enjoy most and keep bringing you back to the conference each year?
I think it's really the close-knit community. Like you said, we see each other every year at the conference. It's a good opportunity to meet people. It's a good opportunity to network. I think that everybody who goes to that conference is genuinely interested in improving the way healthcare is delivered in this country, whether that be through policy, through actual tactical frontline improvements, through the architecture and the building design. I think that a ton of professionals from so many different industries come together who are really interested in making healthcare better here in the United States and also in some other countries as well. I think we've really increased our international attendance at this conference. And so it's really neat to be able to see all of those people sharing ideas and collaborating and bringing their knowledge and sharing that expertise with each other, and just kind of getting to know people on a more personal level. I think that I've got more friends who I keep in contact with through the Society for Health Systems than I might have really good friends here at work, actually, because I'm surrounded by a bunch of architects, and when I go to the HSPI conference, I get to be surrounded by people who know what I do.
Yeah, it's funny. Isaac said that same thing about, there's the professional networking and the learning, but it is a close community. And like you said, people become friends, and there's common interests and common perspectives. And it's one of my favorite events each year. I'd already told Isaac off air, and unfortunately I'm not able to make it this year. So this is maybe the second or third year out of maybe 14 or 15 that it's, the schedule just doesn't work out. But trying to contribute to the cause by doing the podcast and hopefully exposing others to the Society for Health Systems and the conference, and having 3 different people share a little bit about what they do in the name of healthcare improvement. So I appreciate you being able to join us, Laura.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for reaching out.
Sure thing. Have fun at the conference.
Thank you. I'm sorry we'll miss you this year, but hopefully next year I'll get to see you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to miss the learning and the fun. So I know you'll have fun, and it's a great experience. So I'll see you there in 2021.
Sounds great.
Thanks. Okay, we are joined next here in the episode by Darren Judkins. Darren, how's it going?
Great. Yeah, how are you, Mark?
Doing well. Really, it's been a good opportunity here to chat a little bit with Isaac and Laura. And one of the themes we've discovered here is sort of the idea of career paths, and things take a different direction at some point. We've all ended up working in healthcare improvement. So it's your turn to tell your story and sort of the path of how you got into healthcare.
Yeah, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but I started with a business degree and got into conference management and some things that were fairly interesting, but always felt a little empty at the end of the day. And some concurrent actions in my life got me into martial arts and massage, and that opened up a pathway to explore healthcare as a career. And the next thing I knew, I was in a nursing program. And so I was fortunate enough to, get out of America and travel and study in Thailand and India and Nepal, and just it kind of helped shape my perspective on priorities in my life. And ultimately, that led me into a nursing degree program and changed my career in that direction. And so got into nursing. So after providing direct care for patients for about 4 or 5 years. Kind of those threads of processes and wanted to be part of a bigger a part of care, because as a nurse, your life can be very narrow, and you're helping just the people in front of you, and so I had a desire to step out and kind of get into a role that would help me help the systems that provided the care, and so that. And then right at the same time, it just happened to correlate with a lean program initiative at our facility at Boulder Community Health. And next thing I knew, I was reporting to the manager of lean and being trained by Simpler. We had a contract with Simpler, and they schooled me up, trial by fire with the lean senseis as they came through.
Learn by doing, yeah. Definitely,
yeah. And so I owe so much to the senseis that they sent out, and got me schooled up in the toolbox, and changed the direction of my career. Even after the second change, right? First it was healthcare, then lean within healthcare. Yeah.
Well, you've got a perspective I will never have. I mean, it's a perspective like our friend Amanda Mewborn from the Society for Health Systems events. I did a whole podcast with her. It's episode 343 for those who are interested, where she talks about going from engineering into nursing, working at the bedside. And, I try to, empathize with the work that I observe people doing, but I wouldn't pretend to really appreciate it. As an engineer, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, but to me, that's why it's so important to not have engineers try to directly improve nursing work, but instead our role is to help coach and mentor nurses to help them figure out how to improve nursing work.
Yeah, I will say that my street cred, my clinical street cred has gotten a lot thinner over the past 7 or 8 years, but I always go and touch base with the clinicians that I worked with, and it always refreshes the grind, honestly, that and then taxing that's put on your character and your personality to always be on, and just be in that empathetic space. I mean, you can't slip, when you're on stage with clinical care. And so it's a great perspective that I carry with me, and I refresh regularly because I think it's that important. And so, again, while, as each year progresses, you certainly wouldn't want to wake up from a medical procedure and see my face. And nor would I. But nonetheless, it's perspective that I carry with me, and I understand being in the inside of the culture of the processes that you're trying to affect improvement on is infinitely valuable. And I feel fortunate to have had that. And I've worked side by side with industrial engineers who, were helping to lead these processes. And there was definitely a divide that you could see in the language and the understanding. And so it was nice for me, although, listen, I learned so much from all of my engineering brethren, I have to say, I still do. And that's another source of inspiration for me in my career, the vast knowledge that I would have with team members like that. But I feel lucky, and I've been blessed to evolve to a title. My title is Innovation Manager, which is always one of those that you have to explain as soon as you say it.
I was going to ask you to explain it then. So, tell us more about that then, please.
Yeah, it's evolved as well as the organization has moved me through different roles, and this title is kind of at the nexus of somewhere between strategy, business development, project management, and lean application within our organization. And that was kind of the best title that we could come up with at the time. And honestly, I contributed to the job description that I currently hold. And that's a blessing as well, right? In your career, you don't always get to do that. And each subsequent title I've had from lean transformation specialist to innovation manager, there's a subtly different focus. And the focus on my role is to make sure that our services are competitive in the market. And so the analysis we do that get us to, point me in certain directions is just a little bit different than it used to be with lean, and has exposed me to sort of different dialogue within the spectrum of healthcare. And my leadership changed from me to being rolling up to quality, to and the ambulatory VP, and now I roll up to the VP of strategy. And so again, that's been a big learning and a different, just different language and different analysis that I've been exposed to in understanding where value is, and that which will keep our, I work at a small independent hospital system, and we are albatrosses at this point, and our charge is to stay in business. And so I fortunately get to help contribute to making sure our services are competitive so we don't lose market share.
Yeah, you're right. That independent hospital has become more and more rare as there's been consolidation and mergers within American
Definitely.
healthcare. Yeah.
We are surrounded by very large competitors in Colorado. There's one other. We're one of two independent hospital systems. The other one is protected by geography. We are not. And so, keeping our market share is paramount, and that's pretty much my job. So,
yeah. And then, does part of the role, are you trying to look at, people talk about trends or needs within healthcare around helping keep people healthy, the challenges to the business model when you're helping keep people out of the hospital, things like that are a challenge too, right?
It's definitely, it's an interesting time in healthcare, in that fee-for-service is still such a huge component, but then value-based contracting and keeping people healthy is an important space to hold. And so, like every organization, we're trying to balance the act around that. But we look more and more recently. We look to referral patterns and downstream, revenue to see where we actually compete in dollars and cents, and then go upstream to apply the tools of lean and to bring in our partners, that being our patients and our clinical partners in the market, to tell us where we need to be better. And that's the work I get to do, is to do focus groups, run our patient family advisory committee, and literally have the folks who are making the decision as to where to take their care tell us how we need to be better.
Yeah.
And then move along that spectrum.
Yeah. So, final topic here. When you talk about being exposed to new ideas and approaches and methodologies, that's this is a very leading question here, but that's one benefit I've gotten from the HSPI conference. But I'm curious your thoughts in terms around benefits of the conference around learning and everything else that comes from it.
Well, I've been part of the conference, whether being a presenter or a reviewer, for 6-7 years at this point, and every year the conference keeps me humble. It recharges my batteries on ideas and the impact that we in our industry get to have on improving such an important industry in everyone's lives. And, honestly, if it weren't for HSPI, SHS, I doubt that you would be talking to me right now. I mean, it's my network of exposing me to professionals, not in my close geographic realm, which would be exposing me to competitors, but rather folks in other states, primarily, that can inspire me, and I can pick up the phone and call, my connections around the nation, to answer specific or help with specific issues that I'm having, and provide some perspective from the outside. I do that all the time. I'm blessed with a rich network of connections that I've made through the conference, and it's just one of the things that I value, and I've been able to reinforce that value to my leadership to allow me to participate in the conference. And I've been fortunate, that I've never had any pushback in that particular direction. I did have to pay my way last year, I have to say, but it was worth it. It was, San Antonio was fantastic, and it was worth, for me to pay out of my own pocket. Let me tell you, that's a decision you have to make, right? When you get to the point where it's like, I'm going to go myself to this conference because I enjoy the exposure so much. It's important to me to expose myself to best practice around the nation. And that's what I get out of the conference and the society. It's the same thing with SHS. So, and I'm learning more about the SHS value to me as a clinician. My background as a clinician. It's not necessarily something that becomes a huge resume item for me, quite honestly. But it's just such a deep resource bank. And hopefully more and more clinicians see, PI folks see that the same value that I see.
Yeah. Well, and the slogan, maybe, I don't know if I'm a good marketing guy, but the slogan for the IISE could be like, for the conference for Society for Health Systems, beyond the conference. It's not just for engineers anymore, or, clinicians welcome, because that's a positive trend.
We certainly are, but I'll never forget the first time going to the conference as a presenter. I was fortunate enough to be chosen as a presenter, and it was a big deal to me. And I felt like I was surrounded by engineers, and over the years that has, that sense has gotten less and less. So it's fun. It's fun. I make the best nursing jokes, usually in the crowd at HSPI, but. It used to be the engineers making the jokes, and now I think it's more and more the clinicians making the jokes about what it's like to work with clinicians.
You got to give us a nursing joke then before we go.
Oh goodness, no, I'm sorry, that's hallowed ground, and it's all situational.
Okay, so it's more of the snappy comment as opposed to a joke.
That's right. I don't. I do horrible with jokes, so I will. I'll let other folks do that. Get into that space.
All right. Well, fair enough. But well, thank you, Darren, for joining us and sharing a little bit about your own, unique, interesting career arc, and for talking about the work you're doing and the conference. And I'll add a final thought. I've been as guilty of anybody of thinking of the Society for Health Systems as the annual conference, and there's a lot more to get out of it than that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mark. It was an honor to be sharing words with you in this format, and sorry you won't be coming this year.
Oh, well, thank you, but I'll see you in 2021.
Fantastic.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Lean Blog Podcast. For Lean news and commentary updated daily, visit www.leanblog.org. If you have any questions or comments about this podcast, email Mark at leanpodcast@gmail.com.